What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical average American here today to react and learn about Canada, the water superpower. I never knew this, but apparently, water is a very important resource in Canada, and I want to learn today exactly what that means because water is just not something that I've ever really associated that much with Canada. And yet, I'm seeing this video here that the title says Canada may be the water superpower of the world. And that really grabbed my attention. And I want to know exactly what that means. Canada, what are you doing with all this water exactly? So, with that being said, let's take a look.
Canada does have an abundance of a resource in particular that will probably become a lot more valuable in the future.
Oh.
And you probably guessed it, it's water.
It might become more valuable in the future? What does that mean exactly? Does this guy know something that we don't? is the apocalypse coming? Or, I mean, water is always valuable, right? I don't know. This is fascinating to me, because does Canada have a lot of water? Like, I've never thought about it. I'm just going to be honest. So, I've never thought about Canada as having, like, tons of water. Does Canada export lots of bottled water for drinking? Or, like, hydroelectricity? Or what is this all about?
Increasingly, water has become scarce in many parts of the world, and this will only worsen with time, mostly because of climate change. Many countries, especially in emerging nations, will struggle to secure enough water for their populations. And
Oh my god. That's horrible. Okay, so he's talking about like climate change and changing conditions of the planet, maybe leading to less water overall. That's terrifying. But maybe not if you're Canadian. Canada is in a good position. I mean, I know Canada has like lakes and stuff, and it's got the ocean on both sides, and I just never realized how important this could be.
And surprisingly, even rich countries in Europe and the mighty United States will see an increasing difficulty to quench the thirst of their populations.
What? What? Why has he got to call out the United States? What? I don't want to. I don't want to struggle to quench my thirst. I love quenching my thirst. Okay, I better enjoy. This water while I still have it. Apparently, let's keep going.
All right, well, that makes sense. But how much water does Canada actually have?
Yeah.
Well, short answer is a lot. And I mean a lot of water.
Really? Canadians must be much more familiar with this. I have to say, like, as an American, we never think about this or talk about this. Maybe we should. Like Canada, maybe the United States really needs to start getting really on Canada's good side if this water apocalypse is coming. I mean, if the planet is changing and time goes on and we move into the future, and this could very much end up being true, Canada, like, is apparently setting itself up to be in a position. Like, water is an important resource. Like, very, 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 very important. I have to admit, I've never really thought about it before now.
We will only be talking about fresh water resources that are renewable, meaning that
Okay.
this amount regenerates every single year. Fresh water only makes up about 3% of all water on Earth, and of that 3%, only 0.01% is surface fresh water like lakes and rivers.
Ah, so we're talking about fresh water, which is the water that's found in like lakes and stuff. Is that mostly where humanity gets its drinking water? From glaciers and groundwater, like lakes. I also have to admit, I don't know much about water or how it's supplied or how it all really works. It's really interesting, though. So we're dependent on fresh water, which is only like 3% of the world's water. We're dependent on that 3% for our drinking water. And like 25% of that comes from the ground. And apparently, Canada, by the sound of it, has a large percentage of that groundwater.
Which is really outstanding given the amount of rivers and lakes that can be found on Earth. That just gives you a picture of how much water is actually on this planet.
Wow.
Now let's take a look at this chart showing the 5 countries with the most fresh water. As we can see,
look at this. This is interesting. Canada has more fresh water than the United States. I did not know that. Man, I guess if we're thinking about like the Great Lakes and where they're located, they could factor into a lot of this as well. But yeah, I mean, Canada is gigantic, so should I be that surprised? Brazil, Russia, Canada has the most fresh water per country, the third most in the entire world. Who knew?
Canada only appears to be third in terms of freshwater resources with 3,300 cubic kilometers of fresh water.
Wow.
Now, that doesn't seem like that much, right? Well, to put it simple,
Yeah.
a cubic kilometer is an area of 1 by 1 by 1 kilometer.
I was gonna say, like, I think that does sound like a lot. He's like, that doesn't sound like a lot, right? 3,000 cubic kilometers. It's like, that sounds like the moon, wait, made of water. That sounds like a ton.
If you can imagine it in a 3D cube. Now, 1 cubic kilometer is actually 1 trillion liters of water.
Wow.
Which is very hard to wrap your head around.
Wow.
Now, 3,300 of those cubic kilometers would actually be enough to fill the entire country of Samoa under a kilometer of fresh water.
Oh my God. You really don't think about how much freaking water there is.
Alright, so Canada has a lot of water. However, there's lots of other countries that have freshwater supplies that are actually very similar to Canada's freshwater supply.
Huh.
The mighty US, for example, has 3,069 cubic kilometers of fresh water, which is actually only 231 cubic kilometers less than Canada.
Okay. I can breathe a small sigh of relief because the United States actually has a lot of fresh water ourselves. Yeah, there's like the Great Lakes up there in the Northeast, and they're really split between the United States and Canada, aren't they? I bet that's where a lot of the fresh water comes from, right? Am I totally off about that? I don't know. But in the US, we're just a little bit below Canada in terms of water. Okay, that I have to admit, that does make me feel a little better. Whew!
However, let's consider the population of each country and see how much water each country has per person.
Oh my God, he's right. Oh my God, he's right. The population! I didn't factor in the population. There's like at least 10 times more people in the United States than Canada. What's Canada at? Like 40 million now, population? The US is getting closer to 400 million people, and we have to split less water than is available in Canada. We're going to be fighting amongst ourselves for the water. I'm joking around a bit, but maybe there's some truth to this.
We will find out that Canada has much more water availability than the mighty US.
Yeah.
In fact, with this chart, we can see that Canada disposes of 0.0000875 cubic kilometers, which can be translated into simply 8.75 million liters per person.
Wow.
The mighty US, on the other hand, only disposes of 935,000 liters per person, which is significantly less than Canada.
Yeah. I mean, Canada roughly has 10 times more water per person, actually. Wow.
And once you add in China, well, China has even less than the United States at 203,800 liters of fresh water per person.
Wow.
Now, we also have to consider the total yearly consumption of fresh water of these countries.
Okay.
And as we can see from this chart, Canada has a significantly lower consumption than the mighty US and China.
So this is why Canada is the water superpower. Canada has some of the most fresh water in the entire world, while also having a relatively small population. So Canada is really, like, in the perfect position. Like, if it comes down to water and needing water, hopefully, I don't know, hopefully that never really happens where we're, like, living in a post-apocalyptic world where we're all fighting over water. Canadians, like, actually win this, like, easily.
Canada, therefore, only uses about 36 cubic kilometers of its 3,300 cubic kilometers of yearly reserves available.
Wow.
We can also see that China is number one in terms of consumption of these countries at 598.1 cubic kilometers of fresh water yearly. And then we have the United States at 444.3 cubic kilometers of fresh water used per year.
Wow.
Now, this means that Canada only uses about 1.09% of its total yearly available fresh water.
Really? Does Canada, like, sell a lot of fresh water or export a lot of water, or how does that even work exactly, you know? I'm not a meteorologist or anything. I don't know how water really works. But if you take water out of a lake or groundwater and bottle it and give it to people, how does that water come back? Like rain and stuff, or I don't know. I don't think we're gonna even get into that really, but just thinking about it.
Which is significantly lower than China and the United States.
Wow.
Canada, therefore, has a lot of water to spare.
Yeah.
Now, we also have to consider the geography of water in Canada.
Okay.
Canada, unlike countries such as the mighty US and China, has a relatively balanced landscape in terms of water availability and distribution.
Okay.
Canada is blessed with multiple river systems transecting the country, as well as an extensive network of lakes, allowing the vital resource to reach every corner of the country with ease.
Wow. I have never seen Canada like this, presented like this. This is fascinating. So there's this huge body of water, like in the center of Canada. It's the Hudson Bay. The Hudson Bay. That's something I was totally forgetting about. The Hudson Bay. That's like is that an enormous, like, part of Canada's water supply? And then all these, like, river systems that run through Canada. I didn't know about that either. Tons of rivers. So wow, that's amazing. That actually makes it so Canada, like, is a pretty amazing, geographically speaking, a pretty amazing place to live. Like, very hospitable for humans. Like, spreading out through Canada, there's usually going to be some kind of water supply nearby. That's really great.
Canada, shared with the United States, even has the largest lake system in the world, the Great Lakes, as well as thousands of lakes across the country. The only slight exception to Canada's balance in terms of fresh water would be the Great Plain regions of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, which are relatively drier than the rest of the country, but they possess extensive irrigation systems to counter this climate.
Oh, interesting. Really, really interesting stuff, actually. Like I was saying at the beginning of this, as Americans, like, we certainly don't know anything about this water system in Canada, and how great it actually is.
The United States, on the other hand, has a very different reality. The United States has almost every biome imaginable, including vast areas of deserts
Yeah.
with few rivers in between.
Yeah.
This creates a very unbalanced concentration of water sources in the United States, which is especially concentrated east of the Mississippi. And this creates immense water stresses in some areas of the country, notably southwestern United States, in states such as California, Nevada, and Arizona.
Yeah. So, in complete contrast, here in the United States, if you're on the western part of the United States, you're really depending on water supply from other parts of America to be brought to you, basically. Which is I never really realized how different Canada and the United States are in terms of like how water is spread out. That's really interesting.
Canada therefore finds itself in an advantageous position with an extreme abundance of fresh water.
Yeah.
So the question is, what should Canada do with all this fresh water?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. What does Canada do with all this? Is this like a major trade export? Canada sells water? Or do you just keep it, just hoard all the water so that you can go swim in the water and hug the water and just rub the water and just have all the water? Can't you share a little bit with us, please?
Well, the logical solution is to export some, and in the process make the country more prosperous.
Yeah.
This, however, is not something that is commonplace in the world at this moment. However, if things continue this direction, it's likely to become a very lucrative trade in the future.
Huh.
Canada, therefore, should be proactive and start to build some infrastructure, such as pipelines, to export the resource abroad. Many
So basically, the narrator is saying that in the future, water is going to become more scarce around the world. And Canada is in a prime position to take advantage of that, and not only help other nations and countries around the world that need fresh water, but it will also benefit Canada, where you might make a ton of money, which is always nice.
Many dams and reservoirs already exist and could simply be transformed into starting points for these pipelines. This industry would be much less strenuous on the environment as long as the rivers and lakes are able to rejuvenate themselves from what is taken from within.
That's a whole question I have. Maybe I'm gonna have to like research this later, but if Canada takes its water from its rivers and lakes and sends it across the world to other people, how do you get that water back? How does that work? How does nature work? How do you get that water back? I don't know.
And compared to oil pipelines, even if there's a burst in water pipelines, there would be much less environmental impact than oil pipelines. The water could then be transported to ports and then be transported through ships to any country in the world. This
Wow.
industry could be essentially treated as the oil and energy sectors are treated today and could very well be their replacement and the solution.
So this could be huge for Canada, like actually, in the future. Like seriously. Because Canada only uses 1% of your fresh water supply. Like you barely use any of it, yet you have a ton of it. Whereas in America, we have a lot, but we use a lot of it. Canada is in a really interesting position. I had no idea there's this whole water economy that was possibly forming in the future.
Only time will tell if this industry will actually become a reality in Canada. However, it is clear that Canada has an immense opportunity to capitalize and become very prosperous in the process. Canada not only has the capacity, but it also has the stability, unlike countries such as Brazil and Russia, to actually make this industry a reality.
Wow. Wow. This was fascinating, honestly. And it really wants now all I've taken away from this is that I really want America to stay on Canada's good side, because we are going to be begging you for water, please. Canada, spare just a glass, please, of water. But joking aside, this was fascinating. This video was by Atlas Canada. I got to give it a like because that was very well done, very well researched. Really a topic I haven't heard anything about before. I don't know if Canadians out there are aware of all this water that you have and maybe this grand opportunity in the future. It's kind of a scary opportunity, a scary future. If countries around the world need water, they're all going to be looking towards Canada to sell that water, which is good for Canada in a way, and it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm really curious if how much of this is going to come to pass in reality in the future. Very interesting topic. I just wanted to learn more about, and yeah, Canada. Canada, the water superpower, for sure. I had no idea. So, anyway, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on Canada and its water superiority. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and Canadian culture and learning things about Canada for the first time, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.